This podcast is recorded primarily in Stratford, Ontario. Stratford is on the territory of the Anishinaabe-Wakim, Atitawanderunk neutral, and Mississauga's land. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties, notably the Huron Tract Purchase. This new business acknowledges this history of the land and strives to be an ally to the Indigenous peoples of Canada, who have suffered through systemic racism, causing intergenerational trauma. I urge you to be aware of the path of truth and reconciliation that is ongoing in this country, which was fought for in the largest class action lawsuit against the Canadian federal government. Stemming from this lawsuit, thousands of children have been discovered buried at residential schools, the last of which closed in 1996. Want to know on three? 1, 2, 3.
Want to know?
Hit it.
And bonjour. You're listening to the official 1-0 Fantasy Football Podcast. It's time to join your host, the Commissioner Extraordinaire, the Fantasy Football Trade Monger, Owen, Odog, Drake.
Welcome to another edition of 1-0 Fantasy Football, where you're the one and I'm the O. Today, the one is also Mr. Anthony Fusco. Do y'all remember Fusk? Not to worry, because I've got an intro to reuse this time. Hit it! Introducing one of my primary foes in Fantasy Football League of Record. He's worked for Sportsnet, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Brampton Beast, and is currently working in the American Hockey League with the Manitoba Moose. He is Austin Eckler's biggest fantasy fan, the man, the myth, the legend. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Anthony Fusco. Woo. Even give you a woo there.
Unbelievable. I love it. Thank you.
Wait. I got to go back to your other opinion, though.
I'm going to run through a wall right now. Ready. I'm going to run through a wall right now.
Let's go.
Ready. I hope to bring that same energy to today.
It's honestly my new favorite drop. I'm going to be using it quite a bit. Because in fantasy football, we all have to be ready to run through a wall right now.
All day, every day. I got to start charging royalties on that. I got to make some money off that one.
Yeah. What's your price per play then? Because I think I've already racked up 3 in this episode.
Ooh. You know what? You get the friends and family discount. I haven't decided on it yet, but we've known each other a long time, so we can work something out. Yeah,
actually, and we have known each other for a long time, and our mutual friends, we just celebrated 10 years of knowing each other, and I think that means our 10-year sentence is done. So
can't believe it was 10 years already. Jeez.
Yeah, and I know nobody in the audience knows Brandon, but now we can finally set him free. 10 years, good sentence.
He did it. He made it.
Foos, how the hell are you? How you doing over there?
Good. I've been good. We were talking a little bit, I guess, off podcast before, but finally have some free weekends, which is nice. We're in our hockey off season now, which is kind of nice. So I'm just trying to remember how to relax.
And how's that going? Any advice for the listeners? What's the Fusco relax?
You know what? There've been a lot of shows that have come out recently that I'm starting to get into. Got into a little Stranger Things yesterday. I was pretty fired up to see that return. A couple other ones on the go. I've been playing some video games, just trying to not think about hockey because my life was just hockey. So now there's none of it, and it's kind of weird, but I'm digging it for a little bit. So, hopefully a little bit of relaxation on the horizon here till we start to get everything going for the next season, which will be in the next couple of months here.
There you go. And are you plugged into the NHL playoffs? Do you have anybody? Well, I mean, it's a little too soon with my Flames being eliminated recently.
That was a tough way to go down there.
A little controversy.
I thought it was a goal.
Yeah.
I've been plugged in. Like, it's hard to just suddenly turn it all off. I mean,
Sure.
I'm out here in Winnipeg. The Jets aren't in, so that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Leafs and did their thing again, even though they played a good series. So I can't complain, but they still found a way to lose at the end, and Tampa looks like a wagon. So, still plugged in. Colorado, so McKinnon versus McDavid.
Ooh.
Going to be pretty cool. Looking forward to that one.
Yeah, it's going to be a good series. And this is actually the first year that I've been plugged back into the NHL. Kind of got hooked back into all the Toronto Maple Leafs fever. And I was like, I'm a self-proclaimed Flames fan. So maybe I should actually watch them once in a while. But I'm not a huge Johnny Gaudreau fan. I find it's too much like dipsy dangling all over the place and kind of giving the puck away. But
he might be gone. You might not have to worry about him.
Yeah. But it was really exciting to watch them. I came home from baseball the one day, got to watch their overtime Game 7 series win. So that was exceptional. Nice. So, I mean, great season for them. Love the goaltending, love the defense. And it was a bummer not to see Sean Monahan out there. But, I mean, he's really taken a downturn after the hips. But anyways, seamless transition here. I'm going to introduce a new segment. We're calling it the Podcast Fire Starter.
All right. Let's go.
And consider it kind of a quick discussion question to ease into the fantasy football content of every episode. Let go.
Podcast Fire Starter.
What is the fantasy impact of the 2 round 1 blockbuster wide receiver trades? So during night 1 of the NFL draft, 2 star receivers found new homes in the NFC, which we won't be covering today. So let's hit these trades with some quick analysis. AJ Brown was traded from the Tennessee Titans to the Philadelphia Eagles, and Marquise Hollywood Brown was traded from the Baltimore Ravens to the Arizona Cardinals. Anthony, thoughts, fantasy impacts? What are you thinking?
Oh boy. I like the AJ Brown deal. I don't like it if you're the Titans because, what are you going to do over there? But I like it if you're the Eagles who suddenly, hey, a couple of things might be coming together here. And, AJ Brown, as talented as they come, him and Jalen Hurts, they did the recruiting cycle together. They were at Alabama. He recently said, this is Jalen Hurts is my boy. I want to go out there. I want to play for this guy. Motivated. I've seen AJ Brown just out with the Titans. And when that guy was on, he's incredible. Now, if you factor this whole thing in, hey, I want to play for my friend. I want to do a whole lot better because I'm with him. I like that move. If you're the Eagles, I hate it if you're the Titans, because you just lost what was a really, really good player, but I guess the contract was too rich at that point. So if you're the Eagles, I think you're laughing, and I think you're going to, you're going to have a fantastic season with this guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got a couple of points, and I know this is supposed to be a quick question.
Yeah.
Quick little fire starter here.
This does not bode well for the next coming segment, does it?
But, okay, rewinding back to the Titans. Taking my Colts fandom outside of fantasy is something that I always do. But when we're talking about moves like this, where the Titans are worse off, bring it on. Trade away all their best players. Let's go. But yeah, you mentioned him and Jalen Hurts. They were in the same high school recruiting cycle in 2016. They both wanted to play for Alabama, but Hurts ended up staying, and then Brown went to Ole Miss, and he actually ended up playing with DK Metcalf, as some of us know. And then, like you said, Hurts played that huge role in the trade to the Eagles, lobbied the team to strike a deal. And the Eagles had previously tried to trade for Calvin Ridley, but the Falcons backed out when they got the news of his gambling suspension. And the Eagles have been trying to kind of set that number 1 receiver slot for years, drafting Jalen Reagor, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and Devonta Smith last year. So Now you got AJ Brown as the big X receiver. Devonta Smith functions as the flanker or even in the slot. And AJ Brown gets a new 4-year, $100 million extension. So, I mean, at this point, where's my 4-year, $100 million extension? But for fantasy, you got to follow the money. They're not going to pay him $100 million to not be the number one receiver. Anthony makes an excellent point. As soon as he's on the field, if he's not injured, that is, he's fantastic. He's the big shot. It'll be interesting to see how they use him. Maybe they give him some more passes and some more volume. Wasn't as much in that Tennessee Titans offense, but if he gets more volume, you're probably looking at a top 12 wide receiver pretty much by default. Now, I'll start off with Marquise Hollywood Brown because I actually found it's a tweet sort of series or tweet thread, I think it's called. I'm not as well versed in the Twitter sphere, but
I think you got it. That thread sounds right.
Yeah. Tweet thread. So per RG3, blast from the past there, Hollywood Brown wanted out of Baltimore because of Greg Roman and not Lamar Jackson. Brown explained that it was for happiness above, sticking around and playing in Baltimore. And he told Lamar after his second year, he wasn't happy. And by third year, he just said he couldn't do it anymore. Marquise knows that the Roman system runs through the backs and the tight ends, and that's why other wide receivers aren't going there, such as Juju Smith-Schuster and even T.Y. Hilton, who stated that last year during the free agency run. And the best way for him to get paid is in a pass-first offense. RG3 continued on to say that throwing the ball is not the proven recipe for success for the Ravens. In the last 3 years, the Ravens have only thrown the ball more than running it once, and that was last year, and it was the only year that the Ravens had a losing record. Lamar and the being injured and the other running backs being out didn't help. But I mean, Marquise Hollywood Brown is an Arizona Cardinal.
Yeah, you know what? I really like that deal if you're the Cardinals. Although this does hinge on one thing in particular in my mind, which is Kyler Murray. And is Kyler Murray? Are things okay over there? We're I think they will be by the time the season rolls around. But if he's there, I think this is going to be a match made in heaven, like Hollywood Brown's bread and butter. And I know this because I've suffered embarrassing defeats at his hands time and time again with fantasy over the years because, he won't do anything too crazy. And then suddenly there's a deep ball and, oh, there you go. It's a 67-yard touchdown reception, and it's going off against me. So I think Kyler Murray is able to really provide those kind of sparks. I think, the sustained wide receiver one numbers are there. Like, that's going to be your guy. So I love that trade for them, and hopefully for his own happiness to kind of get out of there. And, he was performing, but he was unhappy. So now if he's happy, I really like the look of this whole thing. Contingent upon Kyler Murray being Kyler Murray and being good and sorting through all the, I guess we'll call it the current drama in his life right this second.
Yeah. So the drama that Anthony's referring to here is in, how do I say this without getting grumpy? The new move for the NFL receivers that aren't happy with their teams is to unfollow the team and delete all of the team-related content from their Instagrams. Kind of like little children behind a screen, but I mean, they're multimillionaires. What do I know? But so in Arizona, I think you want to buy Hollywood Brown. I think Anthony's making the exact same points that I'm kind of thinking. He was already sustaining the wide receiver one numbers last year. You make a good point that he was the deep downfield stretcher and he would explode for these 80-yard touchdowns at certain points. But then it started to get a lot more consistent last year when they started passing more. Now he moves to a pass-first offense in Arizona, where we've also recently learned of DeAndre Hopkins' performance-enhancing suspension for 6 games. Hopkins decided not to appeal the suspension. And actually, if I can pause here for a second too, I have a funny misinformation story here. As I heard on a podcast, it was for beaver tranquilizer. And I was sharing that fact very liberally with many people, but I've recently learned that that little bit of info was wrongly interpreted by writers or analysts that didn't know that this was a dodgeball movie reference.
I was going to say someone, yeah, there it is. Low grade beaver tranquilizer. and they weren't able to make the ACAA division semifinals or whatever it was. And it was Bernice. I've seen that movie.
So back to Hollywood Brown, though. In 2018, Brown caught 75 passes for 1,318 yards and 10 touchdowns in college with Kyler. So this is a situation that needs to be capitalized on for fantasy. Christian Kirk is gone. I mean, at this point, we all know how much AJ Green has left, but he was re-signed. Rondale Moore, their, I think, second round pick. He's just kind of just potential at this point. Mm-hmm. So you got Hopkins suspended, and Kyler's college wide receiver mind meld was brought in to kind of assuage that situation and make Kyler happy. So I think he's going to soak up the targets, and we've never seen Hollywood with that many targets.
Honestly, it's going to be really exciting. I mean, I'd be buying him right now if I'm looking at fantasy and I'm looking at this whole situation. He's the clear-cut winner. So, yeah, that's where I would be going. Absolutely.
Okay, that marks the end of our podcast fire starter. Can you feel the heat? We might need to get sponsored by like a spicy burrito or something like that for that section.
I can get on board with that.
All right, let's move into our primary section of the day, the post-NFL draft AFC Gauntlet.
Post-NFL draft AFC Gauntlet.
Okay, so we are going through the AFC post-draft gauntlet style. Boost, what do you think of that?
I'm going to run through a wall right now.
Ready. Oh, thanks, Anthony.
I love it.
So here are the rules of the gauntlet. Each team in the AFC will be covered with a fantasy football focus, and including their draft moves, their free agency moves for 3 minutes and 3 minutes only. Both Anthony and I have 2 teams from each division to cover, and we will ideally in big words, big letters, leave 1 minute for the other to make comments and to provide additional information. This will be a challenge for myself as I got a lot to say. And Foos, I know you scrolled down and saw the show doc here. There is extensive notes, but
that's just a couple.
But I plan to use the rest of it in sort of maybe divisional breakdowns of each team as we head into the season. So It's not like we're not just doing the work for nothing. I'm going to have to pick the important parts to convey to the listeners as we go through the entire AFC today, but just noting the challenge as it is and was a crazy offseason, and we've all got a lot on our fantasy brains. How is this all going to work? Owen will control this process with a timer, which provides a start sound. And then at the end, a 10-second countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And then finally, a whistle to signify the end. Now, if the rules of this game are not adhered to, the offender will be treated to a whack over the noggin with a metal garbage can lid. Oh. Fusco, do you accept the terms of the gauntlet?
I do. I don't think I have much choice, to be honest with you. So I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
All right, O Nation, y'all ready? Then through the gauntlet we go. Anthony, you're up. We begin with the AFC East. First, the New England Patriots.
Is it the timer and do this? All right, so you got some New England Patriots stuff. So I want to touch on one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and that's their first round pick, Cole Strange, the guard, who I think most people, if not everybody, thought was a massive, massive reach. And that was one thing that was interesting to me, because when the guy, like I was reading the story when he was himself drafted and he got the phone call from Bill and blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, okay, like this is a prank. This isn't actually for me. Like, stop it. It's not. And he's like, no, like it's actually me. And then he starts talking to him and he's like, oh, okay, this is serious. So I've learned a long time ago not to doubt Bill Belichick and the Patriots. They're good. They always know what they're doing. They always have some kind of plan or some motivation. So that struck me as interesting, but I think they're going to be totally fine with all that. I like Devontae Parker being over there. I think that's a nice little pickup. It was a little, maybe a little bit weird that it was a trade in the division, but this offseason was crazy. So anything goes at this point. I think Mac Jones is going to be good. He was reliable last year. You could stream him. He had a couple of boom games. That's kind of nice. So I think he's going to be fine. He'll probably take a decent leap. The backfield, there's the old, don't draft a New England running back because you don't really know what you're going to get. So I feel like it's the same thing this time around where I like Damian Harris. He's in his final year. You got Ramondre Stevenson over there. JJ Taylor is there. James White is there. They drafted Pierre Strong Jr. So that's a lot of running backs. And that's one of those things where it's like, okay, who's going to get what? Like, is James White still the pass catching guy, or is Pierre Strong the guy that's going to be drafted to be the James White because James White was hurt? And so there's a lot going on there. And I don't like the crowded backfields, but if you're Bill Belichick, I don't think he cares what I think. He just cares about winning football games, however they do it. So I think it's going to be a pretty good season for these guys. I don't ever count their coaching out of it. Wide receivers and tight ends are still a little bit of a little iffy for me, though I like Hunter Henry over there. If he can stay healthy, and then you got Jonnu too. So it's a whole thing, but I think the Patriots are going to chug along and be completely fine. As long as Bill Belichick is at the helm of this whole thing and Mac Jones takes a step, I think the Patriots are going to be completely fine and they're going to be a good squad this year.
10, 9,
10 seconds left.
7, 6,
Mac Jones, streamer.
4,
This is going to be
3,
Damian Harris's
2,
final year because they
1.
drafted the 2 running backs. And that's time.
Not bad for the first one. Okay. I was trying to mentally, I think I'm close, but I might have a little bit more.
Yeah, I've got an eye on it. So maybe once 30 seconds hits, on the next couple, I jump in, or you just kind of signal you to jump in, and we kind of just pick we pick the important parts and focus on that. Nice. But let's get this timer reset. Let's hop in to the Miami Dolphins. The 2022 Miami Dolphins will be quarterbacked by third-year starter Tua Tagovailoa. In a do-or-die year, as the Dolphins have flirted with replacement quarterbacks recently, the saying tank for Tua has not aged well. Quarterback known for his accuracy has fallen behind fellow 2020 quarterbacks Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, even Jalen Hurts, who he replaced at Alabama. But the Dolphins have used their massive amount of cap space to sign speed and protection. They signed running backs Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert. They traded for Tyreek Hill and also signed reliable Cedric Wilson. And then they signed left tackle Teron Armstead, left guard Connor Williams from the PFF #1 rated O-line Dallas Cowboys. And then they fired Brian Flores and hired offensive guru Mike McDaniels from San Francisco, Shanahan's right-hand man, instituting a zone run scheme that pretty much any plotter could average 4 yards per carry. For the running backs, Chase Edmonds is the running back 1 for Miami. Don't listen to anybody that's telling you Raheem Mostert. I was actually on the Mostert side once the signing happened, but coming back to it, Edmonds is paid 2 times more than any running back on the roster, and Mostert has missed 73% of his games since 2020. They also selected 0 running backs in the draft. Chase Edmonds is the running back to own, and they're both going later in drafts around the same range. Take Edmonds. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in the wide receiver core will be featured, whether it's jet sweeps, in the backfield, downfield, wide receiver screens, quick slants, you name it. Devontae Parker, we mentioned, traded to the Patriots. He's gone. Cedric Wilson, he was added. Could be relevant in the event of an injury, exactly like the Cowboys, but the targets are going to be consolidated between Hill, Waddle, and Gesicki. Speaking of Gesicki, franchise tagged $10.8 million. Follow the money. He's a speed combine freak like Kittle, runs like a wildebeest. Check out his 40 from the combine a few years ago. And he was tight end 8 last year in half-point PPR by necessity, but don't look for him to repeat that. Also, backup tight end Hunter Long, good player, won't be fantasy relevant, but I was surprised when they tagged Gesicki. The O-line should be moving up. They were dead last year. They added Teron Armstead, like I said, to a massive deal. Left guard, Connor Williams. And then that causes everybody else to be shifted to the other side. So looking better as an O-line, looking better as an offense. Fusco, comments.
This has got to be the year for Tua, right? With all these weapons, everything. Like, this is his year. If you can't produce with all those weapons, better protection, everything around him, then you got to go and find another quarterback. It's just as simple as that
10,
for me. That
9,
they did everything for
8,
him.
7.
This is the prove it year.
6,
So let's see what he can do with it.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, we're in mid-season form already, Foos.
Feeling good here. Feeling good. 2 in.
Tell you what, when you hit 30 seconds for yours, I'll give you kind of like a signal or something like that, or a wave. But we're moving into actually kind of the favorite for the Super Bowl picks right now, the Buffalo Bills. Foos, you're on the clock.
The Buffalo Bills are looking fantastic. You got Josh Allen at quarterback. That guy's a stud, probably one of the best in the game right this second. He can do it all. He can throw, he can run. He's basically their running back, which, you know, I don't, if I'm a Josh Allen owner, I don't want him taking a ton of hits, but you know, the guy wants to run, and that is so valuable. Quarterbacks these days that are the dual threat, the running, the receiving, you can do it all. So I love Josh Allen there. What I don't love is trying to figure out that backfield. And I say that because I've owned shares of Singletary or Moss. They drafted James Cook, who is Dalvin Cook's brother. That's just another one. They got Duke Johnson in there too. It's too many running backs, and I don't know who to pick, and I don't know who's good. Singletary finished the year out strong, but is James Cook the new shiny toy? Duke Johnson's a veteran. He's been around. What do you do with Zach Moss? Like, I don't know. It drives me absolutely up the wall that they have all these running backs and they don't really know which one they like, and they flip-flop between this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. So that to me spells headache, and I don't know who's going to be coming, who's going to have the bigger game week after week. So I don't like that backfield, though there is some value to it. So, you know, something to consider. Where I do like the good value with Buffalo is their wide receivers. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is fantastic. You know, he's going to be primed for another great season. I'm really high on Gabe Davis. Obviously, I don't know if this is like, look, he finished the year out. He was unbelievable in the playoffs. He was just, you could see it. You could see the potential. You could see everything coming together. Our team's going to key in on that a little bit more. Maybe, maybe not. But the hype right now with Gabe Davis is just through the roof, and you can probably get him in your drafts really, really late as well. You know, maybe people are looking at Diggs and all those kind of guys as something, you know, focus on that, you know, leave Gabe Davis alone for later on. You don't have to worry about Cole Beasley anymore. Cole Beasley's gone. Emmanuel Sanders is gone. What's a nice little move, though, that I thought was Jamison Crowder. And I liked him. I liked him a lot with the Jets. We have a couple of Jet-centered fans in our fantasy football league, you and I. So those guys have been telling me they like Jamison Crowder when he's down there. So I think he fits into a nice little slot receiver role, and he'll fill that Cole Beasley kind of void. And, you know, if you've watched anything like that, Cole was Josh Allen's little safety blanket over the middle. So that's a nice little addition that I think has gone under the radar in this absolutely insane offseason.
10, 9.
So yeah,
8,
Owen, quick
7,
thoughts.
6, 5, 4, 3.
You know what?
2, 1.
I'm going to take the clang here. Oh,
I went over. I think I did. Yeah, I deserve the clang. I went too much Crowder talk.
oh, you get a clang too? All right. Clangs all around. Okay, so I just want to quickly touch on the Bills running backs. They've shown this offseason that they wanted to fix that position. They attempted to sign J.D. McKissick, and it was reported that they did, but like Frank Gore, this was during the legal tampering period, and the Commanders swooped in and officially signed him. Then they signed Duke Johnson, who's basically another pass catcher in the same ilk, But then they draft James Cook in the second round, who now has the best draft capital in the backfield and is a better version of JD McKissick. And like you mentioned, the Bills really kind of hate their running backs. They flip-flop between Moss, Singletary, and even like Breida last year. And maybe they're aiming to save Josh Allen, was kind of what I wanted to touch on. In terms of tight end, Knox has a minor injury right now. You want to monitor that, but he was, a top 12, not that it's hard to be, he was a top 12 tight end last year, but keep in mind that they also have signed OJ Howard, who is an excellent blocker. And that leads in perfectly to my O-line notes. So they just need the O-line to be average. And then they retained Ryan Bates at right guard, who the Bears tried to sign away. So clearly some value there. And then they brought in Roger Saffold, who's primarily a run blocker and created huge holes for Todd Gurley with the Rams and Derrick Henry with the Titans. And we all know for fantasy football how that turned out. I haven't published the episode with my dad talking about the Bills, but I needed to be talked off a ledge with Gabriel Davis. I am fully ready to jump in and take him as high as I need to, but currently it looks like he's going like around maybe the 6th or 7th round, which is starting to get rich. The drumbeat is building, but that's all you need to know about the Bills for right now. And because I kept talking, I'm going to take the clang one more time. Oh! And that leads us into the New York Jets. Let's reset this timer. So at quarterback, the Jets have Zach Wilson apparently showed up. And one of the quotes, I can't remember which coach it was, but he's apparently looking beefy. If you want to look online, he really has filled out, which is great because he had an historically bad rookie season. Still managed, along with backup quarterback Mike White, to support Corey Davis for a bit, and then, add to the explosion and emergence of Elijah Moore. The running backs, this is where we start getting sweaty. The running back entering the NFL this year is Breece Hall, who the Jets traded up for. He'll start the year by sharing time with Michael Carter, who broke out last year. Carter actually looked great and finished as running back 29, despite sharing the backfield with the ghost of Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson, who's still in the NFL, apparently. Breece will quickly take over this backfield like Jonathan Taylor and won't look back. He's big enough to sustain NFL hits at 5'11", 217, and he's only 21 years old, and he runs a 4.39 40-yard dash. He explodes through defenders and holes in the offensive line. He catches passes with ease, and he should be a top 10 fantasy running back by the end of next year at the very latest, potentially by the end of this year. One rookie running back always finishes within the top 12 running backs every year. Breece Hall will be that guy this year. As for the wide receivers, Corey Davis is not a wide receiver one, but was able to be drafted as such late last year in fantasy football as a great value. And Elijah Moore was awesome. And not too many people were clued into him. From week 8 to 13, when he got injured, he was averaging around 80 yards and a touchdown per game, including finishes of wide receiver 1, 3, and 8 overall in weeks 9, 11, and 13. Enter Garrett Wilson, who will immediately step in as their wide receiver 1, drafted at 10th overall, a fluid, explosive athlete. Let's pause for a minute. Unofficial timeout. Definitely didn't list that in the rules, but I got it in my notes, so we're going to respect it. So let's rewind back to the 2014 NFL draft, where it marked a bit of a shift in the preparedness of the receivers entering the NFL. In this year, Odell Beckham Jr. dominated the NFL as a rookie and was joined by fellow rookies Sammy Watkins, Brandon Cooks, Kelvin Benjamin, who was actually good in his rookie year before everybody gets mad, Allen Robinson, and Jarvis Landry. And the list goes on and on from that draft class. You can look it up. Before them, receivers usually took like 1 to 2 years to be fantasy relevant, but that trend continues to go the way of the dinosaur, with receivers like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase gracing our screens in our fantasy football teams. So the lesson of this timeout is that at least one of these receivers is going to have fantasy relevance this year. So why not Garrett Wilson? PlayerProfiler.com says he's best comparable to Jerry Jeudy, and from his measurables at the combine and his pro day, he's fast, agile, and scouts report him to be a great route runner. Timeout over. Also, there's Braxton Berrios, who excelled in the slot after the Elijah Moore injury and was a prioritized re-signing by the Jets, but he won't be as relevant as there's too many mouths to feed, but something to be aware of if and when Elijah Moore ever gets injured again. Foos, want to jump in?
You know what? I love Elijah Moore. I'm glad we're talking about him. Super high on him. Like I was saying before, we have some guys that are big Jets fans in our fantasy football league, and they were pretty high on Elijah Moore and everything he was doing. I kept an eye on him too, and just something to think about this coming season. And I like Breece Hall. I liked everything that he did in college. I feel bad for Michael Carter because he looked pretty good last year, and things were going well and trending up. And then it's like, now we're going to go get this guy too. So maybe a little 1-2 punch, but I think if
10,
talent
9,
will probably win out, I'd go
8,
Breece Hall.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Whew. We're on a roll now.
Good.
All right. We are shifting gears and we're heading over in the gauntlet towards the NFC North with your Pittsburgh Steelers. Fusco, you're up.
All right, so Pittsburgh, they did one really, really big thing that was, I think, of note to everybody, and that is that they drafted Kenny Pickett. They drafted the quarterback with their first-round pick. This is after they had already signed Mitch Trubisky, so everyone was like, okay, like Big Ben's gone, Trubisky's around, like maybe this will be something. He was the backup for the Bills. He looked okay in limited action. He got another chance, and then they went and drafted Kenny Pickett. So the Trubisky era was very short.
2 weeks.
Couple of weeks there, and Kenny Pickett, like the homegrown talent on that side, he's got a lot of Pittsburgh connections, so I think that's a real nice place for him to land. I still is he going to start week 1? They said he has a chance, so I don't know if I'd take a flyer on him in fantasy quite yet. I'm a little stingy with a rookie quarterback that kind of way, but there have been guys in the past that have stepped right in and have been unbelievable. Like I remember when Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and all those guys were suddenly it's a first round pick or a later round pick, and he could be something, could not be, and they turned out to be stars. So maybe something, maybe nothing, but I think it's too early to tell in my humble opinion. You got Najee Harris as your running back. Volume is king. That guy's got all the talent in the world and was just fed the ball last year. Maybe more of a Ben Roethlisberger thing because he couldn't throw more than 10 yards down the field at any point in time. But look, he's talented. He's going to be fine there. He's going to eat no matter what. I have absolutely no problem with him. And I mean, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, Trey Edmonds, like the guys that are around him they're just guys, I think. And so Harris is the guy. That's who I would hitch my horse to, or hitch my wagon to, I guess. He's the horse in this case. Wide receivers, I love Deontay Johnson. I have for some time now. He just soaks up targets. Again, maybe it was a thing with Ben Roethlisberger. Like that was his safety blanket. He was like, let's find Deontay. Let's get him 10 plus targets. I loved it because I had him one previous year. I didn't have him last year, and I regretted it because I really, really like him. I like Chase Claypool too, a little Canadian content there. He doesn't like being called Mapletron, but I think that's a really sick nickname. So I'm going to call him that. I like Pat Freiermuth as well. I think he's a real nice little tight end there that I saw him last year perform pretty well. I like where he's potentially going. And I don't know. Pittsburgh is a little bit weird for me. Like, I think that they're going to be okay. I know that they have some decent pieces there. I want to see what happens with Kenny Pickett. But
10,
overall,
9,
kind of lukewarm.
8, 7, 6,
I thought I had way more
5,
time.
We're getting closer.
3, 2, 1.
Oh,
Yeah.
get a whack for not leaving me any time.
That's fair. I thought I'm like, great, this will be great. I'll give him like 45 seconds. No.
Yeah, no, I can't see Kenny Pickett being fantasy relevant. I like that you touched on that as well, but it'll be really interesting to see if, I have a note in here that Big Ben averaged an absurd 2.2 seconds per pass, which is usually the amount of time that it takes okay, I get it. Which is usually the amount of time that it takes a pass rush to kind of get to him. So it'll be really interesting to see how these two quarterbacks kind of deal with that. But they also, I just wanted to throw one more note in here from the draft. They did draft George Pickens, I believe in the second round, and Calvin Austin the third. So it's another year of the Pittsburgh Steelers drafting more wide receivers to restock such a talented wide receiver core every year. You can go back year after year. So I'm sure that after this year, we'll be talking about Chase Claypool, George Pickens, and Calvin Austin, and Deontay Johnson will be lighting it up for another team when and if his contract expires, because we just keep restocking the cupboards. But let's reset the timer, move along in the AFC North to the Cleveland Browns. I'd like to start with the Cleveland Browns by pointing listeners in the direction of the Brown conclusion to the Watson saga podcast that I did with Kate, where we discussed the 22 civil allegations of sexual assault against Watson, as well as my decision not to draft him this year and the fantasy implications on the Browns. The decision for Watson's alleged transgressions is coming soon, according to Roger Goodell and statements from the league, and I expect him to receive a suspension between 6 and 17 games, with less honestly being more likely, but I'm hoping for a lengthy one. Watson, if he plays in this system, which is apparently opening up more with the perfect scheme that he is to it, is a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. Pay attention to the suspension news and know if he will be injured reserve eligible in your league and draft him accordingly if you like. Moving to a more comfortable topic, but also still not, the running backs. Nick Chubb was running back 10 overall last year, even with missing 3/pretty much 4 games due to injury. He's Derrick Henry light, doesn't catch as many passes, but dominates as a pure athletic freak runner. Draft Chubb confidently as a high floor, low ceiling, mid to low running back 1. Kareem Hunt is also on my do not draft list due to his domestic and physical abuse captured on video and leading to his release from the Kansas City Chiefs. But he represents a significant value at his draft position, having both standalone value as a receiving back who closes out games for the Browns after Chubb hits his threshold of 100 yards and a touchdown. He also represents a running back 1 if Chubb goes down. Dearness Johnson is the third man. He's been really relevant. He's actually been very relevant, not draftable, but he's been relevant for fantasy as injuries continue to affect Chubb and Hunt. Be aware of Jerome Ford. He's a 5th-round draft pick of this past draft, who will be the running back 2 on the team with Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson free agents next season. Moving to the wide receiver core, Odell Beckham Jr. whined and got his release during last season. Jarvis Landry was cut this offseason, and then Amari Cooper was acquired in a trade. Cooper is going to be the number 1. Donovan Peoples-Jones is continuing to grow into a solid number 2. New draft pick David Bell is a great replacement for Jarvis in the slot. Coach Stefanski was adamant about drafting this guy, and from his workout metrics at the combine, I'm really not enthused, but a player to be aware of if he starts getting hyper targeted in the slot. Honestly, all these wide receivers depend on the suspension. Cooper can likely sustain wide receiver 3/4 in fantasy, and then up to a wide receiver 2 once Watson returns. And it seems like the Browns offense could mimic the old Texans setup, where Cooper is a much lighter version of DeAndre Hopkins,
8,
Bell in the slot,
7,
and Donovan Peoples-Jones
6,
stretching the field like an
5,
old version of Will
4,
Fuller. Jacoby
3,
uses the tight ends
2,
in both Indianapolis
1.
and Miami, which leads me into David Njoku, who once had a trade request as a former disgruntled first rounder, flashed on occasion. Now he has an upgraded quarterback, was franchise tag, and actually yesterday, from the time of this recording, just signed a 4-year, $56 million contract extension. Austin Hooper was cut, so Njoku could be a late round scoop with Jacoby at quarterback, but he's going way late in drafts, and yeah. And their O-line is great, but I took the Clang. Anthony, do you have any quick comments on the Browns?
Yeah, I'll just make it real quick because I don't want that sound coming from me this time. So big fan of Donovan Peoples-Jones. I've liked him the last couple of years, and this all hinges, of course, on Deshaun Watson and him being the quarterback that we know he can be, because we haven't seen him in a while. But if the talent wins out, I like Donovan Peoples-Jones as a wide receiver 2 on that team.
Absolutely. So we're moving on next. We're resetting the timer, going to the Baltimore Ravens. I think I understand why Anthony wanted to cover the Baltimore Ravens here. We got a backfield that's returning from the dead, and the tight end 1 last year, switching over from Kelsey. So let's hit the timer.
Yeah, so the Ravens getting into it here. You still have Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's fantastic. He passed a lot last year, and that was because, as you just said, actually put it beautifully, their backfield was basically dead. They had so many different injuries, and it was insane. Some were on the offensive side of the ball, some on the defensive side of the ball. It just felt like every other practice or game, someone was going down. And that really, really, really sucked because you're missing out on some great guys like J.K. Dobbins, for instance, who is going to be coming back from this whole big injury thing. But that's a talented young runner that, hey, you know what? Every team could use something like that, especially the Ravens, who use just anyone and everyone that they could find. They pulled guys off the streets. Just, I remember the Tyson Williams hype. I was there for it.
I drafted Gus Edwards in the 3rd round.
And you know what? That was looking like a great move. And then J.K. Dobbins went down, and then Gus Edwards is like, you know what? I might as well follow him too and go down. So
let's all tear our ACLs.
It's terrible. You're going to have guys coming back, which is wonderful. You lost Hollywood Brown. You got a 1st-round pick for him. So that's kind of nice, but you lost your deep threat. So there's 2 guys that you are going to want to draft if you are looking at Ravens pass catchers. One, someone that is near and dear to my heart as the tight end I drafted last year, Mark Andrews. Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, awesome combo. They've been fantastic. They know where each other are. He's probably the best pass catcher on this team right this second. So maybe angling for another spot as the top tight end. Maybe, I don't know. You got Travis Kelce still in there. You got a bunch of tight ends that have switched teams, that anyone could be anywhere. But Mark Andrews, definitely buy everywhere you can find. And another person near and dear to my heart because I had him near the end of the season, Rashad Bateman. And this is a guy that was a 1st-round pick, came into the league last year, started to light it up as he came off his recovery from core muscle surgery. He was looking a lot better coming down the stretch. So now there's more targets, more opportunity, and that to me equals fantasy relevance. Owen, what do you think?
I think I got 30 seconds left to talk. This is awesome. Oh. So you got Lamar Jackson. He returned to earth last year off his MVP season. I think we're both saying the same thing. Look for more runs just in general from the Ravens as they return back. That's why they traded Hollywood away. So that tells me buy Mark Andrews, buy J.K. Dobbins. Mark Andrews looks like a man running among boys out there, kind of like Kelce, and he's entering his
5,
super prime as a tight end,
3,
where he's developed
2,
into this now,
1.
and you want to buy J.K. Dobbins.
I think you made it. Oh, I think
we didn't get clanged there.
I think you're good.
Yeah, not that we're getting back into them at all, but it'll be really interesting to see how high people invest in J.K. Dobbins coming back, and if Gus Edwards is still kind of drafted too.
Gus bust, man, all day.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the Super Bowl losing, but still qualifying with an amazing story, Cincinnati Bengals. Hit the timer. Last year at this time, Joe Burrow was rehabbing a torn ACL. Fast forward through the year, and yet a quarterback who threw for 400 plus yards and 4 touchdowns in 2 games. Something that Tom Brady has never done. And Joey B did it in back-to-back games. Currently, I think I'm going to be slotting him in as my quarterback 6, and he should be drafted accordingly. But as you can see, his ceilings with his weapons is incredible. Speaking of weapons, Jamar Chase. Wowzers. Chase torched the NFL, and it wasn't even his ceiling either. He finished as wide receiver 5 overall as a rookie, and he didn't have the most consistent season, but the start to his year was nuclear. I have to touch on T. Higgins right here now, too. He's my favorite kind of lesser known wide receiver for sure. I had him highly drafted last year in all of my leagues. This is a fantastic big body bully of a receiver who finished actually at wide receiver 22 overall, and he had an injury in there. So, we're almost looking at 2 potential wide receiver 1s on one team. So the big question is, can Joe Burrow support both Higgins and Chase as top receivers going forward? My answer is definitively yes. Burrow is another year removed from the knee injury. The offensive line has been improved, and there was a shift last year in the offensive philosophy. The Bengals, for fantasy and real life, are no longer Joe Mixon's team. They are Joe Burrow's, a trend that I expect to continue. Draft Joe Burrow as a guaranteed top 10 quarterback with a very likely top 5 quarterback finish in the cards and a ceiling that could be even top 3 quarterback. With his numbers, he can support Higgins at a wide receiver 2 floor and Chase at a wide receiver 1 floor, where both of them can also chase their ceilings too. Chase as even the potential wide receiver number 1 overall, and Higgins flirting with wide receiver 1 status. Tyler Boyd continued to operate out of the slot and is usable when an injury occurs to either Chase or Higgins, but not while both are healthy. At running back, Mixon was featured early. Burrow and his 3 amigos took over, but he has still 2 more years of good production left in him. He's got an improved O-line. Defenses have to account for the weapons all over the field. Back up Samaje Perine, who can fill in, provide replacement fantasy value. He's currently being drafted in the first round of fantasy drafts. Little steep for me, but the alternative options are like the top flight receivers or Swift, Javonte, Chubb, Kamara. So, I mean, yeah, it's a good option. And the O-line was the downfall of the offense, and they finished as 20th best, but now they've added Alex Kappa. They signed away from the Bucks. Ted Karras, the projected center that they signed away from the Patriots, and La'el Collins signed away from
10,
the Cowboys.
9, 8.
Boost, you get 10 seconds.
7,
Sorry, dude.
6. 5,
Draft Jamar Chase.
4,
Jamar Chase is
3,
elite.
2.
Go and find him.
1.
Go get him. You won't be disappointed.
Absolutely. The one thing that we didn't comment on. Oh, okay. The joke's not getting old. They lost CJ Uzomah in free agency just as he was starting to click with Joe Burrow at tight end, but they've signed Hayden Hurst, a former first-round pick of the Ravens, replaced in Atlanta by Kyle Pitts. Uzomah finished as tight end 25, and actually Hurst was 26, but neither of them are fantasy viable, but just making sure to comment on it. Now we move into the AFC South. But first, let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. Snob-free art for everyone. More than a motto, it is the way that the art is created. Brock Jones art is created for everyone to enjoy at a price that doesn't require a bank loan. This art isn't a social commentary or a deep dive into the inner workings of the psyche. Pretty pictures at a fair price. Visit brockjonesart.ca today. That's BROCKJONESART.ca to browse snob-free art for everyone, to view more information about commissioning a custom piece of art, or to contact the artist Brock Jones himself. If you have an idea, fill out the form on his website and they'll be sure to make it happen. And when you buy your first piece of snob-free art, be sure to let Brock know that you heard about him on here first on the 1-0 Fantasy Football Podcast. Hamlin Knives, handcrafted in Canada. With over 1,000 followers on Instagram, Chris Hamlin of Hamlin Knives has work that speaks for itself. Chris is his own biggest critic while producing his knives that are honestly incredible works of art and can often be found in his natural habitat working on his knives. To see more of his work and his family, including viewing a commercial that his knives have been featured in, as well as countless pics of his incredible stock removal knives handcrafted here in Huron County, Ontario, Canada, search Hamlin Knives on Instagram. That's HAMELINKNIVES on Instagram. Need more knives? Consider the Great Lakes Custom Knife Show in Bayfield, Ontario, Saturday, August 20th, 2022 at the Bayfield Town Hall, located at 11 The Square, Bayfield, Ontario. This event is from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. for only a $5 entry fee. You can follow Great Lakes Custom Knife Show on Instagram or Facebook for more information, or head over to greatlakescustomknifeshow.com for more information regarding this event, or to see the incredible list of over 20 knife makers, a leather crafter, and even a stabilized and hybrid handle material maker. Be sure to let Chris or anyone at the Great Lakes Custom Knife Show that you heard about it here on the 1-0 Fantasy Football Podcast. Welcome back. Now we move into the AFC South, where there's only one good team. in real life terms, but in fantasy terms, there's definitely some value to be mined in here. So we're going to start off with getting Anthony actually to talk about my Indianapolis Colts, because I can talk about them until I'm blue in the face. And on the previous podcast, Josh and I talked Indianapolis Colts for over an hour. So Anthony, you can have this full 3 minutes.
All right, so the Indianapolis Colts, this feels kind of weird for me to be talking about them, but here we go. So they were a good team last year, but one major thing held them back. And I can already see Owen laughing here, but I think he knows exactly where I'm going to go. There was one thing that held them back, and it was the quarterback play of Carson Wentz. Thankfully, this season, you don't have to worry about Carson Wentz because he's a Commander. Everyone's happy about that, especially anyone who is a fan of the Colts. You don't have to worry about Carson Wentz because you got Matty Ice, veteran quarterback coming over from the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan's going to be a real tangible upgrade on Carson Wentz. I mean, you and I could maybe be upgrades on Carson Wentz at this point, but going from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan, the value that is added there is massive. So that is something definitely to keep an eye on. That's a big one. I have a note here. Good weapons all around and better QB play should help this season. You got guys like Michael Pittman, who I'm really high on. I like him a lot. You got Alec Pierce, Harris Campbell's around. You got Mo Alley Cox, the tight end. Those are all really good guys. I'm especially high on Michael Pittman. I think he's going to do some great things, especially having now Matt Ryan throwing to him. That's a veteran quarterback that, he could sustain these wide receivers and really kind of elevate their play. He's been around the league a long time. So that is a definite upgrade for all the pass catchers around. I have one note on Jonathan Taylor. It's Jonathan Taylor is elite, and I have it with 3 exclamation marks on it. He was incredible last year. Absolutely incredible. And I think that this season, this is maybe a little crazy, but he could be better. And that's the scary thing with this whole thing. Like, he's just that talented. And now with a better QB in Matt Ryan, they have the confidence in him that he was so good last year. He could be better this year. And I know that there's still a couple other guys lurking in and around that backfield, but it's Jonathan Taylor's team first and foremost. And I know that the other guys will spell him now and again, but draft Jonathan Taylor with confidence, maybe the first overall pick. I mean, you could definitely make an argument for that. I thought about that in my head a lot this summer so far. And one other little thing before I could toss it over for final wrap-ups to Owen here for his team, but there were, in the 2022 draft class, the Colts had 8 picks, but they didn't draft a quarterback in there. So that tells me that Ryan has the confidence of the organization. So let's see how high this guy can fly.
8, 7.
Maybe quick
6,
thoughts.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take the clang. At this point, my concussion risk is severely high. Yeah, but I mean, I'm still kind of looking for them to sign another wide receiver. Maybe it's Julio Jones to reunite, but I mean, if you want to talk about a Julio Jones replacement, Michael Pittman is right up there. And apparently Alec Pierce, as you mentioned, their second round wide receiver, has already been lighting it up in the red zone, just catching balls over top of people like crazy in OTAs. And it's exciting. And they drafted a replacement left tackle to compete on the line there. And they've already got this solid line. I am a little worried for Jonathan Taylor. Got to be honest. They keep hyping up Hines. Like, if you Google the Colts, you would see that even Frank Reich talked about that he wanted to have him as a fantasy asset. And I mean, we've basically moved to another quarterback where there's going to be potentially a lot of dump offs to the running backs. So it'll be very exciting to see how this all comes together. And they even brought in Philip Lindsay as a backup running back as well, but he hasn't been looking good for the past couple of years. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to see my Colts, and I'm going to really, I know y'all listened to the last podcast where we delved pretty deep into them. So all my thoughts are there if you want to rewind and go check that one out. Okay.
I'm telling you.
I feel like I need a producer that's controlling that and just continuing to do that.
Just spam the button.
Yeah. Like, is it me hitting myself at this point? Okay. So now we're going to move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I was messaging Anthony about this before we get into this, that I really didn't want to talk about this. My worst kept secret so far this offseason, I cannot stop talking about Travis Etienne. So let's hop in and let's reset this timer. So quarterback Trevor Lawrence was disappointing as the next guy after like Peyton and Andrew Luck as the can't miss quarterback prospects. But honestly, let's give him a mulligan and let's see what he can do with Doug Peterson after we've moved away from the Urban Meyer nightmare. Peterson won't be staying behind during away games to get lap dances, kicking players or benching players that fumble, kind of like treating them like high schoolers. So that was amazing to watch as a Colts fan, but I still want to see what Trevor Lawrence can do as just a pure football fan. He finished his quarterback 22 last year, but I would look for him to take noticeable steps and maybe even into the quarterback 10 to 15 range. Could make him a viable streamer. Why could he be a viable streamer, you ask? Well, some of the reasoning is due to the return of Lawrence's college running back and safety valve, Travis Etienne. Etienne was definitely the lightning to Najee Harris's thunder entering last year's draft. And we didn't even get to see him last year because of a preseason Liz Frank injury. Etienne spent the entire year on my injured reserve in our league, Anthony, as you know, and actually could have been to my detriment as you managed to trade Akers, who was sitting on yours. But anyways, I digress. We didn't get to see him last year because of a preseason Liz Frank injury. And he actually later stated if he was going to miss a season of football, last season with the Jags was a good one to miss. So last year's running back room included James Robinson and Carlos Hyde. Robinson finishes the running back 25 despite Urban Meyer's idiocy and despite sustaining an Achilles injury. So the Achilles injury used to be the death knell for running backs, but the shocking return of Cam Akers gave hope. But Robinson should not be drafted for fantasy. Etienne is an extremely risky pick, just to put a bit of a damper on my excitement, but because we haven't seen him on the field, but honestly, I'm all in. He's a pass catcher, check. College QB, check. Offensive minded head coach now, check. First round draft capital, check. And Etienne is currently going as the running back 23 in the 4th or 5th round around the likes of Breece Hall, Elijah Mitchell, AJ Dillon, J.K. Dobbins. So, I mean, with these young guys, you got to shoot your shot on one of these guys. My guy's Etienne, but I know a lot, but I can't fault you if you go Breece Hall or Elijah Mitchell or J.K. Dobbins or AJ Dillon. All of those guys are fantastic. The wide receiver room actually had some value last year. Laquan Treadwell, the long lost first round pick of the Vikings, was surprisingly consistent at the end of the year. Still there. Depth chart got even more crowded. DJ Chark left for the Lions. Anthony and I both love him. The Jags used their cap space to sign Christian Kirk to a crazy contract. And with him and Zay Jones and the pre-existing starters in Marvin Jones and also Laviska Shenault and Treadwell, Kirk was wide receiver 28 in Arizona last year. And then the Jags also have made a big investment at tight end. Unofficial timeout. I focus way too much on Etienne, but the Jags made a huge investment in tight end and signed Evan Ingram. Ingram is currently going as tight end 3, well out of the draftable range for tight ends, but could provide some streaming value. So keep an eye on him because Dan Arnold was used a lot last year when he wasn't injured. And all in all, they got an unspectacular O-line, a quarterback who should take steps forward, an electric, risky running back, and a rebuilding wide receiver course. So, Anthony, quick thoughts. I'm going to rewind the clock and give you 30 seconds here.
All right. You know what? I think you hit the nail on the head. Let's give Trevor Lawrence a mulligan on last season. It was just a brutal year coaching-wise. And for a young guy, first season in the NFL coming into that whole thing, it's a mess. It's no reason the guy didn't have the season he probably could have had, wanted to have. So give him a mulligan here. I like him to take a step forward this season. I think things are going to turn out a lot better.
10,
if he's coached properly, I think things are going to be
7,
a lot better.
6,
and you know what?
5,
It can't get much worse than last year. So
3,
they're trending
2,
up.
1.
Kirk or Marvin Jones?
Marvin Jones.
Oh, got ya. But yeah, Marvin Jones, it's definitely gonna be interesting, but you can scoop up one of those two later in the drafts because why not just take a shot at somebody who could be the wide receiver 1 for a team?
I blame Christian Kirk's new contract for all the wide receiver drama this season. I blame him and that contract.
But if we can take our unofficial third timeout here, and I mean, we've used 2 of them on the same team, but The Kirk contract is one that everybody seems to be signaling out right now. And I agree. It was a bit egregious. It's overpaid. But I mean, this is the year where the NFL salary cap actually went down last year, and now it went up this year, like a crazy exorbitant amount. It's projected to go up even more. So all these teams had all this cap space that they didn't know what to do with. And the Jags needed to overpay to get people to actually come because, I mean, they've been a garbage franchise. Look, you have back-to-back number one overall picks. Tells this whole story. Yeah. But we're moving on to the Tennessee Titans. A little bit more exciting for fantasy. They've made a big trade we touched on. So A.J. Brown is gone. Anthony, you're on the clock.
I think the Titans are brutal. I'm going to just start it right off the hop with that. Yes. They're not good, and they're not going to be great this season. Now, I like Ryan Tannehill, and he's been okay. Like, he's a serviceable quarterback. You know, he's got that rushing upside too. And in one of the notes here, like, he's ranked top 8 in play action pass attempts in 2021, which goes well with first round pick Treylon Burks. And that's cool. I like Treylon Burks. I thought that was nice. It was a nice little first round pick. They're wide receiver. I don't like them losing A.J. Brown. I really, really hate that move if you're the Titans, because you are substantially worse now than you were before. So no disrespect to Treylon Burks. I mean, he's a rookie. He's coming in. Like, we see what he can do in college. He looks pretty good. Does it translate here? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. You got Tannehill still there. He's solid. Malik Willis is right behind him, although there was that whole, like, Tannehill saying, you know, I don't really want to teach the rookie too many things. It's like, okay, like, you're on the same team now. I know you're going to teach the guy to one day be your replacement if you do your job correctly that way. But I don't know. I just didn't like that whole, you know, he's on your team. He's a teammate. Like, take the steps to show the guy this is what it takes to be in the NFL, and, you know, let me guide you and help you that way.
Yeah.
We'll talk some running backs for a sec. Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. He's an absolute monster. He always has been. He's coming off that injury. He did make it back, but, you know, I'm always a little more wary of, you know, especially a big name guy like that. But he hasn't had the mileage that a lot of the other kind of guys have had. So I think that's definitely in his favor. I don't know. Derrick Henry he's just a monster. And I'm just wondering, like, where do you put him now? Like, is he your first overall pick? Is there other things that you can consider in there? So I don't know. Derrick Henry is interesting, but he's basically going to have to beat that entire team, I think, because I don't have much faith in the rest of everything. So I think the Tennessee Titans got worse, and I think that they're in a loaded division. And I don't know how far Tannehill and Henry and all them can carry them, just those guys. So I don't know. Owen, what do you think? As a Colts fan, you're probably happy that the Titans, they don't look very good.
Yeah, I still think they're going to be up near the top of the division. And I want to push back against the loaded division too a little bit. We got the Jags and the Texans in there. So, I mean, but yeah, I mean, you commented on the play action. That's really exciting. Treylon Burks
10,
actually showed up
9,
to
8,
the
7,
workouts already
6,
out of shape. They
5,
drafted Hassan
4,
Haskins in the 4th
3,
round. This is very
2,
important. That's
1.
where. Okay, I get it.
Take it.
Yeah, I'll take it. They drafted him in the 4th round. That's very important. That's kind of where the cutoff is. The 4th is kind of like the last round of important players. And that's where the running backs, kind of like Michael Carter, end up actually in these starting jobs. I think Derrick Henry is one of the only running backs where you can make an argument that he should be drafted in that number 1 overall slot. You saw him catching passes last year, and it was absolutely incredible. If you want to take him over Jonathan Taylor, I mean, as a Colts fan, my whole body is screaming no. But as a rational fantasy player, I honestly could not fault you. Like, yeah, he's over the age apex. He's 28 years old this year and should be on the downturn. But I mean, let's milk one more year out of Derrick Henry. And Ryan Tannehill, streamer, Treylon Burks, you don't like, he's going to be the wide receiver 1. So maybe you take a shot later in drafts, and their tight end is irrelevant. So let's move on. And we're going to head over to another dumpster fire a little bit, but starting the rebuild in the Houston Texans. Let's start the clock. We've got some breaking news. Davis Mills, quarterback of the Houston Texans, can support a wide receiver one. That was a surprise last year because we thought we were getting Tyrod Taylor. Then it turns out this third round rookie quarterback can play, and he actually outplayed most of the quarterbacks that were drafted in last year's draft, including the number one prodigy, Trevor Lawrence. Davis Mills himself is not fantasy viable. So let's shift gears, move over towards the running backs. So this is a bit of a crapshoot. So at the end of the year, Rex Burkhead was taking off and playing well and actually had some really good fantasy football value, finishing as a running back one a couple of times. He was re-signed immediately. And then Marlon Mack, an ex-Colt, was signed in free agency. And then now we have Dameon Pierce drafted with the second pick of the fourth round. So again, you want to think of Michael Carter's situation last year where he was drafted in the fourth and had to beat out Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson. Now Dameon Pierce has to beat out Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead. Mack looked average to below average after his Achilles tear, but make no mistake, this is a talented runner and a talented pass catcher, and Burkhead is as well. So it almost kind of, now that I'm talking it through, looks like maybe Dameon Pierce, because he's 5'10", 224 pounds, been compared to Chris Carson. I would project him to take over the early downs, and then you'd have Burkhead and Mack maybe functioning as the pass catchers. But this is just gut instinct. I see Pierce giving a huge opportunity in his rookie year and should be a late round scoop of yours in fantasy drafts. Shoot your shot on one of these three backs. I would imagine you're likely looking at Mack or Pierce, but see what you have week one and then continue on from there. It was great to have, I think it was Mark Ingram last year as a running back one after week one with the Texans, which was hilarious. And then you can use him as trade bait because you want to upgrade to a better running back. But shoot your shot. Maybe Pierce is going to be something exceptional, and they're going to give him every chance in the world to succeed and take over for these incumbents. Wide receivers, Brandon Cooks was extended. He's always a fantasy draft day value. He was a wide receiver one drafted in the double-digit rounds last year. The community has caught up a little bit, but he's still going to be a value this year. He can't support another fantasy valuable wide receiver. Nico Collins is solid, and they drafted, we're going to give another shout out to a Canadian kid, John Mitchie III, in the second round. He's injured, unlikely to make a massive impact in year one. At tight end, Darren Fells is gone due to the emergence of Brevin Jordan. Jordan was the third best tight end in last year's draft behind Pitts and Freiermuth. Likely a year away from being fantasy relevant, but just have him on his radar as he did kind of break out last year a bit. Fusco, any quick thoughts on the Houston Texans?
I like Brandon Cooks. I think that's a nice little value there. He always has been. Interested to see what Marlon Mack can bring. You know, I liked him before the whole injury and that whole situation. So, look, even on a garbage team, there are going to be guys that if you look closely enough into your research, you can find some guys that are going to be fantasy relevant to help you. And my pick, if I had to pick just one of those guys, Brandon Cooks will be good value for you. You can get him late. And you know what? He'll return something for you. So, yeah, that's all I got on Texans.
Absolutely.
6, 5.
Oh, we skipped 6 seconds.
2, 1.
Keeping me on my toes. All right.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy. We're going through these, I guess, like you said, garbage teams, maybe a little bit, where you got Houston and you got Jacksonville, like we talked about, and even to a lesser extent, Tennessee. And it's like there is going to be a wide receiver like functioning as the number one on the team, and they're going to have value and they're going to be drafted in fantasy. So, I mean, you got to take your shot on a couple of these guys. And that's exactly what led to me having Cooks on my team and being like a value or a player that allowed me to acquire, I think, Keenan Allen later in the year, where it's like you have a guy that is sustaining this value, and then you can include another player and kind of move up in value. And then that's how you start building a monster. Mm-hmm. So we are moving to our last division. We're in the AFC West. We made it. We are going to visit the Los Angeles Chargers in the Gauntlet first. Anthony, you're up. Let's restart the timer. Cue the Austin Eckler, love.
Here we go. Oh, I'll be talking Austin Eckler. That's my boy. But first, we have to talk about Justin Herbert. And the mantra for these guys in the offseason was protect Justin Herbert. And I think they did that. They used free agency. They improved their defense, which honestly, like they had the offense to run. They could do a whole lot of things with that offense. Defense turned out to be their undoing at the end of the season. So things have changed on that side, which is great. They've improved. I think that's going to definitely make them a lot better. They look a lot more balanced and well-rounded. That's only going to help. Austin Eckler. That's my boy. I love that guy. I love also not only that he's this talented running back, and we've talked about this before, he's transparent, really transparent about injuries. And, it was him last year who on one of his streams is like, I might not be playing here. Pick up Justin Jackson. And guess what I didn't do? I didn't pick up Justin Jackson. And guess what happened? I lost, mostly because of that. So having a guy like that where everything is so shrouded in mystery and secrecy with all these injuries, having a guy like that just be upfront and honest and say, take this guy, or this guy's been real good. Watch out for this. Breath of fresh air. I love it. And he's a talented player. So that's a massive win for me. They also drafted Isaiah Spiller. And I like that. I like that move because it's a nice compliment to Eckler, hopefully more than just a guy that I guess we've kind of seen in previous seasons with like a Larry Roundtree or Justin Jackson to a lesser extent. Like he had some boom games later on, but I kind of like Isaiah Spiller to spell Eckler in there. Wide receivers. Keenan Allen is fantastic. Mike Williams took a big step. Can he stay healthy? That's a big thing. Hopefully, yes. Josh Palmer. I like this note here that he's a big draft winner. The Chargers didn't select any receivers in the draft. Palmer's fantastic. I think he's going to break out in a big way this season. So I'm pretty high on him. And you can get him late too, because I don't know how many casual fans know Josh Palmer, but just keep an eye on him. He's going to be something. And one last thing before I throw it over. I love Gerald Everett now being over there. I think that's a fantastic move. I think Herbert loves his tight ends. The way Herbert slings the ball, he's going to be able to find these guys. That is a fantastic value pick, especially with tight ends where there's a couple of the big guys, 2 or 3 of them, and then it just drops off. Gerald Everett can be something special, I think. Owen, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Austin Eckler has to be a top 5 fantasy pick, and it's crazy the journey that he's been on from, an undrafted free agent. It looks almost like Mike Williams might be starting to pass Keenan Allen in the wide receiver depth chart here. But both of these guys are going to be top flight wide receivers. You're looking at that.
2,
and
1.
I'm going to take it.
Take it. I'm like, he's going to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. I forget Jared Cook. I was forgetting his first name there for a second, but Jared Cook did retire. So that's what led to the Gerald Everett entrance to the Chargers. And I don't know, Gerald Everett, I'm almost at the point where I'm done believing in him, to be completely honest. Like,
give him one more season.
Okay, I'm with you, but just wanting to know that Donald Parham might actually be the guy. He was starting to take over for Cook last year, and yeah, that'll be really interesting. And Herbert, I was just quickly looking through my notes here as I've started to take notes and tried to get the rankings going and everything as I start this new fantasy football journey. But, Herbert's probably going to be drafted as the 2nd or 3rd quarterback off the board. If he goes 2 rounds after Allen, you want to take him. From week 11 to the end, he was a quarterback 1 every week. And they got, and as a note for the Chargers in general, their head coach is so you got Eckler, who loves fantasy football on one side, and then you got their head coach Staley, who goes for it on 4th down all the time and keeps the drives going. You want to own a couple of Chargers in your fantasy football leagues at whatever value. But I'm not going to take another clang. I'm going to move on to the Denver Broncos. I know Anthony and I kind of talked them to death earlier in the offseason, but we're going to hit it again with maybe a post-draft look at them. But there wasn't much changes, so let's hop in. So at quarterback, you got Russell Wilson. It's probably pretty likely he'll be overdrafted in fantasy, but it's kind of hard to see a reason why not to. I think one of the notes that's being under-reported or under-focused on is that he's getting Rodgers' old offensive coordinator. So, that kind of says to me that there's going to be a lot more wide receiver touchdowns, and maybe the Javonte Williams owners are screaming at me right now, but we'll get to him in a second. But I mean, I think it's just going to mean more touchdowns in general. Russell should bounce back from his finger injury, which he claimed didn't affect him, but we all know it did. He has so many weapons and a debatably better O-line than in Seattle, but it was still relatively average. He finished quarterback 16 last year, despite having the finger injury and the unhappiness and the whatever going on in Seattle. And it's kind of great that Fusco's here too, because I'd compare him to Matt Stafford moving from the Lions to the Rams last year as he joins the Broncos. I'd project him for kind of the same inconsistency, a little bit of Stafford, where he's going to have a boom week. He's joining like this offensive team, all these weapons, but I would put him in the top 7 quarterbacks, and he's being currently drafted as quarterback 10 behind Hurts and Rodgers. And by my math, that makes him a draft day value. In the running backs, it was almost Javonte season. I remember on this podcast, we were sitting here praying for Melvin Gordon not to resign, and then he resigned. But this is a new coaching staff, which might suggest that we should believe more in Javonte taking over. But also important to note that Nathaniel Hackett, the head coach that I mentioned, Rodgers' old OC, he's now head coach, and he had a backfield committee every year with Aaron Jones, whether it was either Jamal Williams or AJ Dillon. But I mean, ideally, we're moving away from the almost comical even split last year between Javonte and Melvin. This year, I project it to be at least 60-40 from Javonte's favor, if not 70-30, kind of the split. And I would project Javonte to be in the top 12 as a running back 1, but not with the running back 1 overall potential that he could have had if Gordon gets hurt. Gordon, that would even put him into the running back 2/3 range, making him a bit of a draft day value. The offense should be potent, and just think about how many drives are going to be extended, because it's not Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater. Moving on to the wide receivers, they have literally 2 number 1 wide receivers in Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, and a number 2 receiver in Patrick, not to mention a cable burner in KJ Hamler, who would be a number 3 on other teams. They drafted Montreal Washington in the 5th, so another investment in the wide receiver core. Travis Fulgham, Seth Williams, Kendall Hinton. The wide receiver corpse is loaded. Sutton, currently wide receiver 26, value. He will finish as a wide receiver 2 or better.
9,
Jeudy, currently
8,
wide receiver 25.
7,
He's going to finish
6,
as a wide receiver 2 or
5,
better. They lie in the
4,
hot zone for wide
3,
receivers, including
2,
Pittman, Godwin,
1.
Mike Williams, Michael Thomas, Darnell Mooney. Oh! So I would just say take one of these guys. My official recommendation is Sutton. I think he'll be more targeted as Russell's DK replacement. And then also just quick note, if those weapons are enough, enter Albert Okwuegbunam. Points for pronunciation there. Athletic freak, being drafted as tight end 18, so he can be had for next to nothing. So maybe draft him with your last round pick and see what happens in this offense. Russell Wilson likes tight ends, and he's talented, and the team traded away Noah Fant in the Wilson deal. So yeah, and also keep in mind that Jeudy could face suspension after a rest this month, but it's not looking like anything too serious. So just be aware. Anthony, quick thoughts on the Broncos.
A lot of weapons over there. A lot of weapons. You know what? Russell Wilson's in a good situation. I think it's going to take a little bit for him to adjust, but once he fully does, I think he's going to soar over there. They're so dangerous. I love Sutton. I love Javonte Williams. And I think you hit the nail on the head again with the split between him and Melvin Gordon. Javonte's too talented to not win out eventually by the end, either 60-40, 70-30, or something along those kind of lines. I see him taking over the backfield. That guy is as talented as they come. And you know what? That's one Melvin Gordon injury away from Javonte Williams being
correct.
Just an absolute monster. So keep an eye on them.
Awesome. Okay, and now we're moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders, and Anthony actually wasn't here to give his thoughts. I think we had Joel on for that podcast for talking about the Davante Adams trade, so I'm really looking forward to hearing him delve into the Raiders. Derek Carr, Josh Jacobs, here we go.
All right, so we are talking the Las Vegas Raiders here. You got Derek Carr. Derek Carr is solid, and he was usable last year, had a few really big games. So then they went out and they got Davante Adams. Davante Adams is a star. Even without Aaron Rodgers, this guy is elite. He's going to be great down there. Carr is going to look for this guy all over the place. Like it's Davante Adams. The guy's going to eat. The guy's going to be great. One thing that I found interesting, we're going to talk running backs here. So you got Josh Jacobs, you got Kenyon Drake, you got their rookie, the 5th round pick, Zamir White. So you have those 3 guys. They didn't pick up the 5th-year option on any of their 3 first rounders from 2019. Jacobs being, the biggest one of those guys. Are they going to run Josh Jacobs into the ground this season? Because, hey, he might not be around next year. Let's just go for it. So
love that call.
I think there's some real big value there. Jacobs is talented. I know he's got his little, we'll call them little idiosyncrasies, things that happen, but Jacobs is talented. And if they give him all the opportunity and say, you know what, you're not coming back, let's just absolutely use you in this offense, I think that's a real nice pick there. And he's not going to go too high in your drafts. So there's someone to keep an eye on. They're wide receivers / tight end now. I love this look. I love Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow. If you don't know who Hunter Renfrow is, he's just this random white guy, but he is fantastic. Keep an eye on this guy. Carr loves him. He's real good. He's going to be a nice pair with Devontae Adams. And then if that's not good enough for you, you have Darren Waller. And Darren Waller, who, I had him in my one league last year. I played against him in another. When Darren Waller is on and being targeted, that guy is a freak of nature, and it's so hard to stop him, to bring him down, to do anything. So that trio of wide receivers, oh boy, does that ever look really, really good. So if this offense functions the way that it should, well, that's a dangerous Vegas team. What do you think?
Yeah, the Waller part. And so I think you're right. I think Devontae Adams is just going to soak up targets. Like, there's that college kind of connection there too with him and Carr, and they want to prove themselves right. I think they're just going to hyper target Adams. And I think that kind of torpedoes, or like a lesser version of torpedoes, Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller's value. For tight ends, I look for the teams that have one other target, and it's just 10, kind of this consolidated 9, target between the tight end and the top 7, wide receiver. 6, so now 5, when you have all 3 of these guys, 3, I'm kind of out on Waller.
2,
just saying.
1.
But I mean, there's always the values, and yeah, you just got to shoot your shot. But yeah, could be very interesting. Mm-hmm. All right. And we have made it through the gauntlet to the last part, where I'm going to cover the Kansas City Chiefs. This wouldn't be a Kansas City Chiefs discussion without first noting that they traded away Tyreek Hill. So we'll start with the quarterback. Patrick Mahomes finished 4th last year, but it sure did not feel like that. The middle of the year absolutely sucked. He was quarterback 18 from week 7 to 12 when you're trying to make the playoffs, and that did not help you. Tyreek's now gone. Is that going to mean a downshift for Mahomes as a fantasy quarterback? I like to think not. They seem to have done a pretty good job trying to replace him and putting speed on the field around him. And now they have another year to adjust to that cover 2 shell defense that kind of had them flummoxed, where they took away the top half of the field and took away Tyreek running deep. So I'm going to skip to the wide receivers for a second here. So they've added Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then they drafted Sky Moore in the 2nd round. So you got Juju filling the big slot wide receiver role, and I think he's going to be used a lot as a blocker and obviously as a pass catcher, but this is going to be good things for the running game. You've never had a big slot receiver like him in there. And then you have Mecole Hardman and Marquez Valdez-Scantling with just speed on the outside. So I'm predicting an even more even target share, although Mecole was actually drafted to replace Tyreek back in the day. So I think with these wide receivers, they'll probably be drafted relatively late because nobody really knows which of the 3 to kind of go with here. So I think you take a shot on either Mecole or Marquez late in drafts to see if they can become the yak monster that Tyreek was. So then you have Kelsey at tight end. He's going to be tight end 1 or 2. We kind of already touched on him a little bit with Mark Andrews. Do you prefer Kelsey or Mark Andrews? That's probably going to be the question, but both teams have actually traded away their number 1 receivers, leading to more targets to the tight ends and the running backs. So it's like me and Anthony here having have a decision to make about who's going to be kept on our teams, because we both have Kelsey and Andrews, and having a positional advantage is huge. So I would always recommend, especially with Kelsey going in the 2nd round, take Kelsey in the 2nd round and just lock down that position, or take Mark Andrews. Just lock it down if you have a later pick with Andrews is going behind him. And then let's shift over to the running backs here for a second. So Clyde is the only one important note is that Clyde's the only pass catcher on this team. Ronald Jones was signed as a free agent, but he has less than 1 target per game. And drops passes all over the place. Derek Gore is an excellent running back. He's electric, but he isn't really a threat. He's more of just an excellent third stringer that I wanted to note. And Clyde was the big winner from the draft, as only 7th round running back Isaiah Pacheco was drafted. And I just want to note here too that Clyde has gotten me 2 years in a row to draft him early in our first round after keepers in the 1 year, and then again last year in the same round. So, and I've been looking to trade him away both times, but the O-line looks great. Blocking receiver in Juju. You got the blocking of Kelsey, and now no Tyreek. So should I fall for it again? His draft position is right. He's being drafted as running back 27 instead of like a 1st or 3rd round pick like the last 3 years. So you could get him as your running back 3, which is insane value. And a really important note here too, that should be jotted down in y'all notebooks. Running backs usually soak up vacated targets from teams where wide receivers leave. So at least some of Tyreek's vacated targets should head towards the running backs. And as I noted, when they average less than 1 target per game in Rojo and Derek Gore, you're probably looking at Clyde to soak up all of these targets. So Fusco, quick comments on the Kansas City Chiefs before we get out of here for the morning.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like what you said about Kelsey and, between Kelsey Andrews, who's going to be the guy kind of thing. And don't be afraid to take one of those guys early because, you said it perfectly. Having a positional advantage, like you had Kelsey this year, I had Andrews. We didn't have to worry about tight ends. And in a position where
10, 9,
it becomes
8,
so thin so quickly,
7,
that's real
6,
nice. Also, I think
5,
CEH is going to be
4,
okay this year.
3,
So maybe
2,
that 3rd year, you do
1.
get sucked in and you take it.
Oh, that was right at the buzzer. Well done. And I'm not going to clang you because we're right at the end here, but who's your guy in the wide receiver core?
You know what? I like Sky Moore. I like Sky Moore a lot. I think that, this might be really, really bold to say, but why not say it? Out of all the wide receivers that were drafted, I think he found his way into the best possible position. Yeah. And I think his talent is going to win out. I think he's real good. And not to disparage like a Juju or Marquez Valdez-Scantling or those kind of guys or Mecole Hardman, but I think Sky Moore is going to be something. So I have my eye on him personally.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I could leave here with a takeaway, I would say that as fantasy managers, I think what we want to do here with this AFC, and that will probably be the same sort of takeaway in the NFC, take one of these sophomore or rookie one rookie in Breece Hall, but take one of these sophomore or rookie running backs, take a shot on the explosion. And the same thing with these rookie wide receivers. Like I noted, like they're ready for the NFL. This is a huge trend, and you can see them just dominating the draft, the first round of the draft. And one of these guys is going to explode. So you take Sky Moore, or you take, we talked about today, Garrett Wilson with the Jets. Just shoot your shot on one of these guys and try to make sure that it's from a team where the target share looks like it could be conducive to them producing in fantasy. Anthony, closing thoughts.
I just want football to start right now. This got me all fired up for it again. And it's still so far away, but I don't know. I think we broke it down beautifully. There's guys to watch. There's going to be, especially if you're in fantasy with this whole thing, like take the shot on these rookie guys. Take the shot because someone somewhere is going to become something. And that's how, and then because we're in a keeper league, and I'm sure some of our listeners are, some aren't, but if you're in a keeper league and you can find one of those guys and they have their explosion and you got them, like you make your life in fantasy for the next few years that much easier. So take the shot on one of them because you know what? It could pay off for you. And then you don't have to worry about it long term. It's the best feeling in the world knowing you have your stud guy locked up.
And we're going to leave you on these two thoughts. Sky Moore, top 24 wide receiver.
Oh,
heard it here first.
We called it.
And Travis Etienne, I'm going to whisper this one in.
Ooh, real
Travis
nice.
Etienne, top 10 running back. Boom.
Okay, everybody. We're done here for today. You're going to want to listen to the next episode of the official 1-0 Fantasy Football Podcast. Odog, out.